So this is my latest distraction. I don't have any air right now. My air compressor died last weekend, and I've been working on it here and there. Took it apart and cleaned up the contacts on the back side. Went ahead and popped the case off and cleaned off all the contact areas back there and put it back together. Changed out my run capacitor and start capacitor, and fired it up. Everything was going great until it wasn't. Ended up blowing the start capacitor, and I don't know why, and it happened after it had been running a while. For some reason it didn't swap over, and it kept that start capacitor hot, and then it eventually blew. That's what I'm thinking right now, but that's purely an uneducated assumption, so I don't know. So this air compressor, it got me so pissed off that I thought, well, I need to get my big air compressor going, and I've been holding off on that project for a long time. That was kind of a started project, never finished kind of thing. Here's the status of that compressor project. I've got motor issues right now. I changed out the feed line. I originally had some number 10 wire. I thought I might have been starving it. Really, it's got a 5 horse. It's an industrial 5 horse, and I really needed to put 8 wire on there. So that's what I did. I upgraded my breaker at the breaker box, and I upgraded my wire to 8. I changed out my capacitors as well. I had some capacitors that was bad on the motor. I swapped those out, and still no luck. And I started looking for options, motor options here local to me, and when you start getting into motors like this, they get pretty pricey. And then I thought, well, I need to open up the back side of this, and then dirt dauber's been all set up in there, and it's a mess. And I think it might have been because it's just absolutely filthy back here, and I had no idea. So I'm going to give this a once over, and then we're going to try this motor again. And I wouldn't be surprised if it decides to work this time around. Anywho, we'll see. So on the back cover plate, you'll see you've got the contacts here. They were filthy, and so if you're careful, you can pull this copper over to the side and out from underneath that tab, and then it's easier to clean. You want to clean both sides of this contact. If you look, that bottom round plate in the center of the screen, you want to make sure you clean it, and you want to make sure you get the underside of this contact good and clean. And I've just started on this one, so it's pretty still filthy, but this one's now cleaned up. It's nice and shiny. So that's going to help me. It's not going to hurt me. It's got to do better than what it was doing before. So anyway, so that's the back plate, and then I'm going to get into getting this all cleaned up. The windings is pretty dirty. I'm just going to get that cleaned up best I can in there, and then we'll give her a shot again. So I've got this all cleaned up, and went ahead and lubed it up. So we'll give her a shot. Put her back together. While it's on the bench here, I thought I'd go ahead and put power to it. This really is not a good setup. I wish I had it running through a magnetic starter right now and it wasn't directly wired. I might be regretting my choice here in a minute when I smoke this dude. I've got it bolted down to where it's not going to fly off the shelf. Let's just see, I guess, now what's going to happen, and then I'll know if I've got a bad motor or not. Okay, we're going to go for broke here. I'm just going to pop it on and let it kind of get up to speed, and then I'm going to shut her down. Hell yeah, that's working. Woohoo! That there was a big win. And while we're at it, we might as well talk about wiring. First off, disclaimer. As you can tell, I am not an electrician. I am not licensed, bonded, or anything like that. I really have no idea what I'm doing. I use YouTube just like you're using YouTube. Sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But I will review my wiring here that I'm using. And it might be just something to refer to or think about when you're looking to do this as well. So, coming in from the box, this is 8 wire like I mentioned before. Doesn't matter which goes into what terminal. Right there you've got L1 and L2. There at the bottom continues L1 and L2. So hold that thought for a second. Your pressure switch, the 2 outboard wires are the supply. The outboard here and the outboard here is the supply that you are feeding this pressure switch. So that is the line. And look at that son of a gun. I need to make him go away. Whoa, 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 shit, he got inside. This is not reassuring. Okay, I was distracted by the wasp. So I was talking about the pressure switch. So the 2 outboard ones are the line. So that's the power coming in. And then the 2 in the middle are the load. And they go back through the conduit and up and out. And then connect to the motor power leads that's in this other coil, shield, whatever, come out, and they're wire nutted on. Now, people talk about, hey, can I get them wired the wrong way or whatever? Yeah, you can, but the lines from the motor, they were previously, put together in their group. So as long as you're not messing with what was done before, as far as, like in my case, these 2 wires were spooled up together and I didn't take them apart. These 2 were spooled together, I didn't take them apart. You just put power up to those and wire nut it off, and it will tell it how to rotate based on the configuration that it is. So anyway, now if you had these just kind of hanging, well then, you're going to have to follow this to get your rotation right. I didn't have to worry about that because mine was already together, and I'm pretty sure it's rotating correctly. It's counterclockwise. So I really don't think there's really much more to talk about. Now, nothing to it but just to do it. So let's give her a shot. past the cutoff. It went past the cutoff, so I don't trust my pressure switch. I'm going to have to change out that pressure switch. So I got a little distracted and figured while I was getting this stuff hooked up, I might as well go ahead and put my auxiliary air vessel in place. This is a 60 gallon. I bought this for like $10. A guy was scrapping it out. It's an old Cobalt. The max pressure on this one though is 125, and my compressor 175. So I'm going to have a regulator and a valve in between this and the main one, but I'd say for typical operations I'll be able to draw off of this, no big deal. I don't see myself using a 125 in the shop or anything more than that in the shop, but I might use the 175 side for some sandblasting. I'm not sure, but anyway, so I just gave it a clean over, and I've got to get some plugs and whatnot. Went ahead, I've primered the top, but I'm going to get the bottom all primed up. I didn't want to move this thing 100 other times after the fact, so I figured I'd just go ahead and knock it out now. Get some primer on it. So I got some paint on it. I got to figure out how I'm going to connect everything together. Right here is where I'm going to run off the supply that goes into the building. And this is 1/2 inch. I would much rather be 3/4 of an inch right here, but I don't have a fitting, and these are going to be kind of oddballs to get. So for right now, I'm going to go ahead and set this up here off of the 1/2 inch game plan, and then I'll end up coming back to this when I've got the right pieces and convert that over to where I've got a straight up 3/4 inch run that starts here and goes up all the way through the building. I've got to put a control valve. I'm going to put a control valve. The supply line is going to come into here from the main tank, and there will be a control valve before it gets into here, and I'll throttle it down to the 125 psi max that this is rated at. This little bunk's just going to get closed off, I think, or I might run a pressure regulator or a gauge here. I'm not sure. I've got to make some more isolators for the feet, and eventually I'll come back and paint this thing blue. I'm hoping, but I had to knock down the rust regardless, so I've done that now. It might set in primer for a while, but it's cleaner than what it was. So anyway, moving on. Got to make a shopping list now. So I'm back to work on the air project today. Here's how my ox tank is looking so far. I pulled out the original bushing that was in this tank. I'm pretty sure this was the one. It's got a 1/2 inch there. I want to keep 3/4 as a standard throughout my entire system, at least from my my system to the main run that's going to go through the shop, and then from the main run, which is going to be 3/4, I'm going to drop down with 1/2 inch stations of air. So I went by and I picked this up. I could have probably drilled out and welded in a larger size to the original one, but I just picked this up and took a task off my list. That's 1 inch right now, and I've got to adapt it from 1 inch to 3/4 for running out of there. Up here is going to be a little bit more work. Unfortunately, I went ahead and I've painted this up, so I'm probably going to have to touch this up. But this is a 1/2 inch, and I really need this to be 3/4. I need to weld in this bushing. I wish I maybe had thought about it and ordered a weld-in bushing. Would have been slick-sided and more. But I'm pretty sure that I can cut this out and weld this in, and everything will be fine. But that's going to be the dump. It's going to dump from the main compressor into here, into this aux. And then I might end up putting a gauge on this, probably, on the aux, and then that'll be pretty much it. I've got to build some isolator pads. I'm going to mimic the design that I did for the main compressor. So that's a project. And then I've got a mountain of plumbing fittings right here, trying to make sense out of what my layout's going to look like. But my big ticket items, I got this THB dryer, 3-stage dryer system, and it accepts 3/4, and it also accepts, I believe, the pressure rating 225. Yeah, so this is a nice piece of kit right here. Not like your typical cheapies. And so anyway, I'm excited. I just got to decide where I want this at. I really need to have this probably nearest my point in the system that I'm serious about, as far as serious about protecting, as far as water and debris. This is another system. It's a much cheaper system, but I picked this up at a yard sale and it was new. So I've got to decide what I'm going to do and where this is going to go. Then I've got some old paint booth stuff that I don't know where I got this at, but I need to kind of assess whether or not these things they probably need a new kit. They need to be serviced either through a filter or something or other, and I hadn't got into that yet. What I'll basically do is provide for the installation of these things and cap it off if required, and continue moving on with the production, and then get back to refurbing, refreshing these filters, and then I'll put them into the system eventually. I've got a pressure switch that I need to go ahead and install and get my power back on my my compressor. It's a Ingersoll Rand. I picked this up from Tractor Supply, and I don't need these right now, so I'm just capping those off. I've got to do that. Let me see. We'll talk about my system, how I'm going to lay things out here in a minute. I'm going to build a dryer system that's going to the pump head will push into this dryer system and hopefully pull out maybe 70 or 80% of the water, and then dump into the tank. I've got, when it's all done, I should have about 40 feet, 45, maybe even 50 foot of 3/4 inch copper line involved in that dryer system. So that'll be that should be a plus. I've got to get to sanding and soldering. As far as the outside here, not much has changed since we got the compressor up and going. I am going to slide the main compressor down about, I don't know, about 10 inches, and then the aux tank will be beside it. And I'll probably, I've got to rework all this right here. The dryer is going to go back on the wall right here. I'll stand it off from the wall to where it gets some air. I thought originally about making one that would have been the size of this, I don't know what you call this, the grate that covers the pulleys. If I remember right, it's about 18 or 20 inches by like 32 inches. I was going to do a copper manifold that would have mounted up to that. And they also sell them. But I thought that that would have been limiting, compared to the space that I have available to me. So I just make a larger one and put it up on the wall. Anyway, a lot to do today. Might even have to do some cutting and threading of some pipe. I think I've got everything I need, but we'll find out. Yeah, really a big old mess of multiple projects right now. Got to finalize my wiring. I don't know if today's going to be long enough. Anyway, get back to you. So I got the coupler cut off. I just used a 4-inch grinder and a cutting disc. Got it sliced off, dressed down. It was built up here in this area, so I'm not trying to get it perfect. I'm going to leave this build-up material here and use it as some reinforcement for where I'm putting in this new fitting. But what I think I'm going to do is I've got this step bit. I'm going to go at it with this, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll be able to get this dude dropped in there. I might have to enlarge it a little bit by hand, and then bevel it up and weld it up, and then I'll have my connection here that I need, and then we'll move on. She'll sit down in there, and I'll probably hold it up high a little bit to where I can get some good weld up in there, and then move on. This will be a big plus to have this thing converted 3/4 all over. So get her welded up. Okay, here we go. Got it all setting up. I should be able to get around it really good on all sides. I'm just going to hit some tacks on all 4 corners, and then probably just one tack, and then level it out, and then get the second one and just kind of work my way through it all. Okay, here's a tip as far as making isolator pads for your compressor. I've done this before and I was happy with it, so I thought I'd go ahead and do it again for the auxiliary tank. The base material that you use, this is typical to like livestock applications. You'd put this on the bottom of a trailer, that like if you're hauling horses or something. The farm supply store sells this material. It's probably 5/8 of an inch thick. You can see it's got 2 different textures. And I don't know where I got this at, and I cut it out with a hole saw. And I've got an old Linux, this is like 3.5 inches in diameter. Works out pretty good. You just got to take it slow. And anyway, it fits pretty well. And it sits proud of the box. Box just basically this electrical box for like hanging a light application, like on the side of a building or something. It basically holds the assembly together and mounts underneath the feet of the compressor. And then I go ahead and I put one on the top, so I use a total of 2 in the whole thing, and I paint it up. I countersunk the bottom pads with an old sacrificial Forstner bit. This definitely would not be used for fine woodworking anymore, but it'll groove out that bottom to where the bolt sets below the rubber, and that's what you want. I didn't bother with putting a washer back there. I'm just gonna go for broke and run her in, and then it'll go through the base and I'll be done. This is a plug cutter, typically used for woodworking. I use that to do the center bore of the rubber pads, because the pilot is never big enough, so you got to go back and drill that out. But I'll go ahead and paint up the metal parts and get them installed there on the bottom, and that'll pretty much wrap up my ox tank air build, and then I'll be ready to move on to other parts of the project. So there you go. Tip of the day. I did forget one thing. So all those circles, of course, are knockouts, and they're basically punched all the way through. And so you may want to go ahead and tack up your center one, because it could give way on you and get loose down the road or whatever. So I just went ahead and put like 5 tacks on each of the centers in order to keep it all together. So anyway, that's alibi.